Oh god. Another side-by-side distro benchmark? Actually, the last distro benchmark I did like this was over a year ago, and it was a system resource benchmark. This is going to be a weird gaming benchmark video. And we're going to be looking at Manjaro 17.1.10 and Elementary OS 0.4.1 Loki. Now admittedly this is kind of a weird matchup because Elementary OS is using a GTK stack and the Manjaro install is using KDE. Looking at the raw system resources, Elementary is actually consuming more memory, but I can't tell what exactly is doing that from the processes. I'm not sure if maybe the GNOME system monitor just sucks and it's not telling me all of the information, but KDE is using less memory, but it also appears that KDE is favoring 2 CPUs, whereas Elementary OS is balancing the load between all 4 CPUs, so that's really interesting. Now for this video we're going to be looking at a superfecta of games on my GTX 760, so let's hop to it. The first game up is Hitman 2016, probably my favorite game right now. Now the Steam FPS counter is at the top right, and in retrospect I probably should have changed the color because it's already not terribly easy to see, so you'll just have to take my word for it. Interestingly enough, Elementary OS pulled ahead here because the highest FPS recorded was on Elementary. It pulled 44 frames a second, whereas the highest Manjaro recorded was 36. On the other hand, both distros dropped into the low 20s whenever there was a lot happening on the screen. The average frame rate for both distros was about 30, and honestly the game does a really good job of keeping things under control so you stay around that 30 FPS average. Despite Elementary OS having the highest max frame rate, it doesn't really affect gameplay because you only see those high frame rates when there's absolutely nothing happening on the screen. And next up we got Shadow of Mordor, a Linux classic. Now Manjaro really takes the spotlight on this one. It recorded a high of 65 and a low of 38. Elementary recorded a high of 55 and a low of 38, so the same low, but Manjaro soared above by 10 FPS, and arguably the Manjaro scene is more chaotic and there's more action happening there. Now in the context of gaming, the biggest difference between the two distros is not the desktop environments, it's actually the NVIDIA driver version. Elementary OS is running driver version 384, whereas Manjaro is running 390. Now Tomb Raider proved to be the most interesting of all of the benchmarks. Tomb Raider uses Vulkan, and I would expect that the most recent NVIDIA driver would have the best performance, but that wasn't really true. Manjaro pulled a high of 42 and a low of 11 in the exact same area within seconds of each other. Elementary OS, on the other hand, pulled a high of 57, but a low of 3. Now one thing that you may notice between the two clips is it is really, really stuttery, and I can't describe just how stuttery it was because it wasn't just the video, it was the input too. Now if you took out all of the stuttering, I would expect the lowest frame rate to be closer to maybe 20 to 25. The average frame rate varied between the two distros, but I would say that in general Elementary OS was actually higher than Manjaro. Now the last game we're going to look at is Rust, and it'll be my outro too. Now I didn't put together a graph or anything like that for the FPS average because this is a pretty darn unscientific video, and pretty much all the data in the video is anecdotes and opinions, so there's not really a point to try to quantify that with numbers. As far as Rust goes, Manjaro had a high of 39 and a low of 26. Elementary had a high of 43 and a low of 29, so Elementary actually came out ahead despite having an older driver. Now in both distros, the low points came from the battles between these stupid scientists, and the high points happened during the boat ride home, which you'll see in like a couple seconds or something. At any rate, I think these benchmarks are really interesting because the kind of common wisdom in the Linux community, and I guess PC gaming community in general, is the latest and greatest drivers and software automatically equal the higher frame rates, and that's not actually true, or it doesn't seem to be. Now it's entirely possible I have something misconfigured on Manjaro, but I don't think so because I have the KDE compositor disabled and everything. I don't know if it'll show up in the final rendered video, but there was some artifacting in both of the Rust clips. I'm not exactly sure what caused that. I'm editing the videos with Kdenlive, so it's entirely possible that Kdenlive sucks and it caused artifacting in the final videos. I don't know. But I didn't see that when I was actually playing and recording the clips. So yeah, I think an important takeaway here though is it doesn't really matter what distro you play on or maybe even what NVIDIA driver version you have, because the differences between the benchmarks I did here, you're not really gonna notice the FPS differences in game. I'd say in general, Elementary OS did better than Manjaro in all of the games except for Shadow of Mordor, but again, the differences, you're not even gonna notice them. So before I end this video, and while we're on the Rust clips, I want to point out that this is the EGIO Rust server, and it's public. You can join and hang out with us and build, and it's a lot of fun. And yeah, I think I'm gonna end the video now. If you liked the video, hit the like button, subscribe. If you want to support me, I've got Patreon, Brave payments, and all that other stuff. Either way, I appreciate your support, and thanks for watching.